times in various conferences for AISLi and internationally. So we're extremely happy. So I think we're on a roll now. So before I introduce Adrian officially, I'd just like to say a few words about AISLi, if you don't know us already. AISLi was founded 40 years ago by Peter Brown, who also founded eQuals. And we pride ourselves on our passion for excellence in learning and teaching. Member schools often organise training events individually in our schools, and AISLi as an association organises an annual Teachers Conference, Director of Studies Conference, and a Directors Conference, and a Front Office conference as well, actually, so across the board. And thanks to these conferences, Adrian has participated in many of them and has become now a friend of the family. So let me introduce formally Adrian. Is a trainer, consultant, writer, and speaker. Adrian is a past president of IATEFL and a current IATEFL ambassador. So I'm delighted to invite him to your kitchen tables today to share with us his reflections and perceptions on our new experience of being online teachers. So thank you very much, Adrian. Over to you.
Thank you, Sophie. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm just going to share my screen, so hopefully you will see my PowerPoint, and I will put that on presentation, and now with a bit of luck you'll see the big screen. There we are. Well, yeah, thank you very much, Sophie. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be associated with AISLi and with all of you teachers coming here on Friday afternoon. I can't see you, but I'll say it's nice to see you. I really appreciate being here and the opportunity to speak with you. I'd love to hear you, and in a way I'll hear you a little bit through the chat box, but I'm hearing you in my imagination, and I know quite a bit about what you've been through in the last 2 or 3 months from all sorts of sources, not least to speaking to teachers and friends from Italy. So it's an extraordinary thing that you and we and people around the globe have been through, and teachers have been in a very particular situation because, as I said this morning, it's a very curious thing that for, as you know, for probably 2 decades, our profession has been debating the pros and cons of teaching online as opposed to teaching face-to-face. And we're still busily coming to no conclusion in particular when suddenly nature leaps out from behind a bush and says, never mind your debate because you're going to do online from Monday. And suddenly all of us somehow mobilize in some extraordinary way, no doubt not as effectively as we'd like, but we get there. And this is an incredible thing. Will we get back to face-to-face class? Well, we're all hoping, and let's see. For the time being, we're online. And this is a crisis. And as many people have said, not least of all Winston Churchill, but many others, probably including most of you, don't waste a good crisis. Figure out all the cards are in the air. Everything's up for grabs again. It's a chance to reboot our practice. And that's really the angle that I'm coming from. Old things are more difficult. Things that we are used to in class, but new things become possible. And at first, I speak for myself, don't want to admit it and don't want to change. And then we begin, perhaps grudgingly, perhaps with delight, to see that there are new and interesting possibilities. I want to ask you 1 or 2 questions to begin with. The first is this: I assume that you are all online, but most of you are teaching a kind of face-to-face online, like Zoom or some other app like that. So here's my first question: Are you preparing more? Are you spending more time preparing or less? Put more, the same, or less in your chat box.
Adrian, do you mind if I just come in a second here?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say to everybody, if you have any questions during the presentation, to write them in the question answer box,
yeah,
and not in the chat, because we'll lose them otherwise.
Yeah, we'll have questions at the end. So stick questions to me, which I'll answer at the end in the question box. And the answers to these little questions that we're doing now in the chat box, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay,
Are you spending more, the same, or less time on preparation? I can't see the chat box. So,
oh,
so tell me.
I beg your pardon. I thought you seen basic. It's more.
Everyone's spending more. Okay, I think we know the answer to that one. I'm not surprised. I am too. The next question is, are you seeing your students face-to-face online, or are you not seeing? Do you see them visually or not? You can put yes or no.
Okay. Yes. Sometimes yes, both. Yes.
Righto. Thank you. So that's the majority are seeing. And the third question about teaching is, are you finding it more stressful or now less stressful and more interesting, adventurous? Put down an adjective to how you're finding it at the moment.
Less stressful, more interesting, less stressful, more stressful, more interesting, challenging, more intensive, challenging, stressful, more intense, more stressful, more interesting, more stressful, challenging, new, more stressful, challenging, more stressful, more challenging.
That's the picture then. All right, everyone is saying more of something, and that can be more stressful. And of course, we know that stressful terms can sort of morph into excitement and to challenge and to interest, and then it can morph back into stress. So that's a kind of fine line which is crossed there, and I fully understand that. I think we're all in that situation.
There are a few, Adrian, that say sort of more innovative, and I prefer it, and exciting as well. Very few.
That's very interesting, because you see, this does feed into the opportunity of crisis. You know, that the cards are up in the air, and there is an opportunity now to do things differently, to escape from the grip of our previous practice, which was perhaps our own habits, or perhaps dictated to us by the routines of school and exam and syllabus and parents and so on. One more question, two more questions about your students. Do you reckon that your students are liking this online experience, preferring it to the face-to-face class, or not?
So no, some do. No, not really. Yes, no, not really. Yes, no, no, no. By and large, yes. I don't think so. Most prefer it. Yes, of course not. No, no. Most of all, yes, I do. Some prefer face-to-face. Some of them do. Yes, some prefer. Some miss their friends. Prefer face-to-face. They accept it as necessary. 50-50. Right. Not at all. Teenagers are tired.
It sounds as if the balance is there. As far as you can see, your students are not preferring it, though quite a few are liking it. And here's another question which you may or may not be able to answer. Do you think that your students are learning approximately as much or as little as they were before, or do you think they're learning more or less? Same, more or less?
Okay, so do more, much less, same, more, less, same, less, more, same, less, same, more, okay. Less, same, differently, less, some, less, more, less.
But lesses are in the majority, with some sames and a few mores. Okay. Yeah. And I guess that's not surprising, because there are very many things that are very different, not least of all that they are at home, and we could imagine there are other kinds of distraction. Okay, kitchen table teaching. Why have I chosen that title? Well, I suppose we're doing exactly that at the moment. Many of you are on a laptop, on a table at home, and you may even be in your kitchen, or you may be in your dining room or bedroom or wherever you have a table. I'm at the moment in the dining room, and the kitchen's next door, but there's someone in there. Now, this is your personal space. You're not in a school. There's me at my kitchen table, you at yours. And we are in a kind of, as far as this kitchen table is concerned, it's a special place. You know, you meet with friends around a kitchen table. You share home space. You know, this table here with its clutter and its stuff and its coffee cup and its flowers and bits and pieces on the table. Kids wandering through the background maybe, domestic interruptions, other noises. It's a strong setting and it's quite different from a classroom. And around the kitchen table, we speak about what matters, whether it's trivial or whether it's serious. We speak from ourselves. And this is the setting that I'm just calling kitchen table teaching. And the kitchen table setting is, I would say, high on affect compared with our usual classroom. What is affect? Well, we'll come to that in a minute. Probably it's well known to you. It's slightly less well known as a word in the English language, but in Latin languages, I think it's very clear. And my question is, here we are, we could regard online as a kind of kitchen table teaching, which has a flavor to it. And it has, I would argue, a great increase in connectivity between people and in affect. So this is my, my plan. And now I'm going to change slide and hopefully your slide changes too. Do you see something different now? Sophie, is that different?
Yes, we can.
Right. So, here's the plan. I've just been talking about that first section, kitchen table teaching. I'm now going to, in just one slide, remind ourselves of what is affect, the emotional, the feeling side of being in a classroom. And then in a couple of slides, look at facilitation, the way of attending to affect in our teaching. Because that's what I'm going to do. And then we're going to go back to kitchen table teaching. And I'm going to give some an outline again, a deeper outline, and some practical tips, which are the tips I give myself, in fact. So that's the agenda. We've got affect, then facilitation, and then the main part, back to kitchen table teaching. So this bit is reminding ourselves about affect. Here's a place to start. We teachers, in fact, we humans, but at any rate, let's consider teachers. We teachers all create an atmosphere in our class. You do. Your students sit in your atmosphere. When you were a kid at school, or as an adult now, when you go to a class, you immediately recognize the atmosphere that is created by the teacher. The teacher may not know their own atmosphere. We may not know our own atmospheres, but all teachers create them. Here's a question. When you were at school, could you recall a teacher who, when you were at school, had a really good effect on you, who left a strong and really positive impression on you, your growing up, your learning? And the question is very simple. What was the special quality of that teacher? Could you just tap that into your chat box? What was it that was so good for you about that teacher? And so
shall I go?
Yeah.
Charisma, empathy, warmth, clear, passion. I adored that man. Of course, cheerfulness, humor, involvement, engaging, enthusiastic, innovative, empathy, creative, trust, patience, empathy, friendly, supportiveness, empathy.
Thank you.
Passion,
and there are many more that we could, but you see already what they all have in common is that those are person qualities, human qualities. They're qualities of the person. They're not qualities of methodology, and nor are they qualities of knowledge of the topic. They are something else. And that is essentially what affect is about. That's something else. The feeling experience, the felt experience of being in a classroom. That is what affect is. Let's just move on a little. And it's what all teachers strive after. And yet something gets in the way, as we all know very well. Let's just move on a bit. Here is a sort of mini thumbnail definition of the affective domain. It concerns the felt experience, the feeling experience of the person in question, the students. It has to do with belonging, relationship, personal meaning, values, self-concept, and above all, really, with self-esteem, how you are feeling about yourself. If self-concept is how you view yourself, then self-esteem is how you feel about what you view. Your view may be accurate or not, but self-esteem is how you feel about it. And the big thing about it, of course, which is no surprise to you and to me, is that felt experience impacts on absolutely everything. And so proponents of affect in education are saying, or they might call it whole person education. They are saying, look, you've got to educate the whole person. It's common sense. Because even when you're attending to the affect, you will still be developing the cognitive. Now, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, Professor Bloom, working in American universities, with many others, created this international notion of, which was for all educators to work from, of cognitive, affective, and psychomotor or physical domains. And what happens is that the cognitive got really thoroughly applied, and the affective kind of got left out, and the psychomotor too, to a large extent. We are in a cognitive education set up pretty well everywhere in the world. Proponents of affect say this, educate the whole person, it impacts even cognitive achievement, but they say it gets left out. Why does it get left out? Well, schools may not support it. You speak to teachers, speak to yourselves, speak to each other. Why does affect get left out of your lessons? Well, my guess is you're going to make replies like this. Because I'm under pressure, because I've got a syllabus I have to work through, because my classes are too big, because the school doesn't support me in doing this, because results and exam results are everything, and therefore we are trying to crash people through exam, and so on and so on. You may also say, when I, the teacher, was at school, the affective domain was not very evident. I am a child of a cognitive educational upbringing, and though I deem the affective domain to be hugely important, my own education kind of lacked it. You may say that. You may also say that you get to the classroom and you find it's heavily designed for cognitive outcomes and not affective. And you may also say, and we all find this too, and schools are casualty zones for this, that problems that arise in the affective domain with our students that make them, so to speak, problem students are not well dealt with or picked up in the first place by cognitive approaches. Anyway, I think I've gone off on about that enough. Even writers in education, one of the things they start so many articles on is that the affect is overlooked in education. Very important, but overlooked. Okay, enough about that. You've now fully remembered what affect is all about, and you've fully remembered how much perhaps you value it. You're beginning to remember the times when you've had it as a student, when you've been in an affective environment, and you've begun to remember, no doubt, times when your own classes feel that they are more affectively complete, more kind of affectively nourishing, when the felt experience is kind of almost, tangible and as a genuine addition to the class. Okay, so that's enough about that. I'll come back to my question, which is, could teaching online, could throwing all the cards up in the air and having to start again give us a new opportunity to focus on affect, especially perhaps because we probably mostly view online teaching as devoid of human qualities rather than full of more human qualities. So kind of there's an extra challenge there. And I'm saying actually there are quite a few opportunities, which is what I want to point out. The next step I would like to do is to say, having said felt experience is what it's about, what are some areas of felt experience that we as teachers in class can notice? And I've picked three, which I think are the three most important. So the next slide is the three areas of felt experience we can look out for. And I hope you're still following and that you're hearing me and that everything's okay. And if it isn't, put something in the chat box and Sophie will tell me. I can't actually see the chat box, so I'm relying on Sophie. But
so far so good, Adrian.
Okay.
So far so good.
Right. Three areas of felt experience. first, the experience of myself, I, the student, how am I experiencing myself? And once again, the critical thing here is self-esteem. Everything seems to come back to self-esteem. The whole of the healthy growth of a child, teenager, and adult seems to come back. That self-esteem is the single most reliable, solid predictor of just about everything, how you feel about yourself. And that is clearly in the affective domain. And some people can get it out of the cognitive domain. But so the experience of myself, when I'm okay with myself and I'm feeling okay, then I can take risks, I can participate, I have positive self-talk for myself and positive talk for others. And, you know, in the blue there is, well, you know, one of the things that we teachers can do there is listening without judging, because everyone is always afraid of there being judgment. How can I listen and clearly show that I'm accepting them and not judging them? Here's the second area of felt experience, which is my experience of the group around me. Clearly it overlaps with myself, because how I feel about myself is going to affect how I relate with the group. But it's a different starting point, it's a different entry point. For example, will I be accepted as a kid or as a teenager? I may not use this language, so I'm speaking kind of retrospectively. Will I be accepted? Will I make a fool of myself? What will happen if I do? Will it be safe to be me? You can probably all remember times at school as a youngster when you said something from you, maybe got laughed at or teased, and decided to keep quiet about that bit of you or to pretend something else. So that's the next question. Is it better? Had I better pretend? In other words, would I be safer not being quite me, but pretending something else? We soon suss out, what shall I pretend? It's not healthy, but at times it's a very good survival tactic, temporarily. Will there be factions? Will there be in-groups and out-groups? Will I be able to participate in healthy relationships, and so on? So here, you know, once again, acceptance on the part of the teacher and a kind of anxiety-free lightness. You know, it's easy to talk about being anxiety-free, but we cannot hide anxiety. So, you know, there is a question: what can I do to feel less anxious? Big question in the class, at any rate. And here's the third zone of felt experience: the experience of the power setup, and it's actually quite a big one. And it didn't occur to me for a long time. It's obvious. Will I have a say in the things that matter to me? Will decisions get made about me and what I'm going to be doing without consultation of me? So this is the whole realm of power and decision making. And of course, we teachers are making decisions all the time. We're making decisions about, during lesson planning, we're making a dozen, 100 decisions about what will happen the next day in that lesson. And most of it is I will decide. And then during the lesson, it's I who decides who's to speak, who's to stop speaking, how long for, what suffices as correct or not, which bits to skip out, which bits to include, and so on. And here, something which I find very useful, I just want to share this with you, is, and again, pretty obvious perhaps, over the left, you've got I decide, I, the teacher, I decide. I'm now speaking from the teacher's point of view. But, how much of what I decide could be decided, could be shared, and that would be we decide, I and the class. I say to them, look, let's decide between us. Who thinks this? Who thinks we should do that? Who prefers that? Okay, let's take a vote. And then on the other hand, there's you decide. Look, here's the decision. I won't decide, but you vote on it and we'll do whatever you decide. Just a way of reminding myself and of gradually bringing students back from the kind of resigned passivity of not making decisions about themselves into the arena of decision making. I don't want to make too much of that, but those are three zones that I think we can look out for, three affective zones, three zones of experience. Now, a facilitative approach helps us to take felt experience into account. And a facilitative approach is nothing mysterious. It's human stuff. We all do it. We all can do it, and we can all get better at it. In my view, and you may disagree, teacher training, teacher methodology, course books, and so on are not strong on facilitative interventions. They're strong on teacher interventions, and the things are not quite the same. I think when we teach very well, we probably are inhabiting the facilitator in us as well. But let me just be clear now. This is the next step. What do I mean by facilitation? And then we're heading back to the kitchen, the kitchen table teaching. But I want us to come back to kitchen table teaching with a sense of affect, a sense of what it means to facilitate affect. So here's the next slide. And these are core qualities of facilitating affect. And what you're going to notice is that these, like the things that you wrote down just a few minutes ago about your best teacher, these three qualities kind of catch that. In fact, some of you used these same words already. They are not methodology qualities. They are not subject knowledge qualities. Oddly, they are people qualities, interpersonal qualities. And I'm only going to quote one person here, the great American educator who you may well have know of or have read, and that is Carl Rogers. He often used to say that too much school learning is from the neck up. In other words, it's just in the head. And he said, you know, the problem with that is that it's insufficiently relevant because it misses out the felt experience. It has little feeling or personal meaning, and the result of that is, of course, lack of engagement, boredom, and the lack of that, gradually, a sense of failure, and the lack of that, self-esteem. What pops out the bottom, low self-esteem. And then a person is behind for the rest of their life, perhaps, until something happens, maybe. So Carl Rogers was this great writer on education. He did some extraordinary things. He's kind of, along with Abraham Maslow, the founder of humanistic psychology and what we call humanistic teaching. Now, he said 3 qualities are sufficient to facilitate the full development of a child if we are a parent, or of students in our class if we are teachers. And here they are. Yep, that's it. Empathy, acceptance, genuineness. He said these are necessary, and I missed it out here, but he said these are necessary and sufficient for the development of a fully functioning person. It's a nice phrase, that, fully functioning person. And his whole approach, by the way, before the term humanistic came in, he called a person-centered approach. So let's just have a look at these 3 qualities for a moment. You know what they all are, because in the same way as you know everything that I've been saying already. Let's just remind ourselves, empathy is using the capacity that we have as humans to feel how it is for the other person in their situation. It's beyond sympathy. It's not sympathy. It's me using my human sensitivity to have at least a feeling of how you're feeling. Perhaps it's difficult to do it 100%. Perhaps you never find out totally, but it's a direction of travel, and we can all begin and get along that journey. What stops us, of course, is when we are so engaged inside ourselves that we've no attention left to pay to the other person. And that's one of the skills that we need, of course. Acceptance is has to do with not judging the person in front of us. So I'm listening to the student, and they are struggling, and there's not a voice inside me saying, "Oh, hurry up," or you always get it wrong, or "Why are you so slow?" You know, easy to say that, of course, I know, but rather there is an acceptance that this is this person. If I want this person to do their best, I have to accept them as they are and to show it, not to pretend to show it. And the other thing about acceptance is this: And if you're a parent, you'll know it. If you've had parents, you'll know it. And if you're a teacher, you'll know it. If you've been a student, you'll know it. Which is this idea of using acceptance as a kind of bribe. I will accept you. I will like you as long as you do what I want you to do. I'll give you my liking. Now that's good. Yes, well done. You're doing what I want you to do. And then I withdraw the liking, apparently, or really, when you start deviating from what I want you to. In other words, it becomes a control mechanism, a kind of bribe. And this, Rogers points out, is devastating in its results, quite devastating. So and yet we're all victims of that because we've all been through it. And we all, unless we're careful, may apply that. I speak for myself. So acceptance. And it's a very nice place to be when you see that there are judgments and that you can drop them. And the third is genuineness, which is kind of, it ought to be the simplest, being yourself, not pretending, not playing a role. In other words, if you're teaching, you are yourself and you're teaching. You are yourself who is teaching, rather than you are a teacher first. You don't hang yourself up on a peg outside the class and go in as a teacher. You are yourself. You don't have to pretend, you don't have to defend. Easy to say. So those are the three qualities. And I come to those because I think they're portable, they are human, we all have them, and we can all get better at them. And when there's something to have more front of mind in class, and I'd like you just to bear that in mind. I think that's going to be very helpful in our kitchen table. And one more slide about facilitation, which is like a simple starting place. If you want to increase affect in your class, and you would like to, let's say, transmit your capacity for empathy and acceptance and genuineness and so on, those things, and happiness and all that, what is the number one place you can start when you're with a group of people in helping to raise the quality of affect in the class? It's not empathy, acceptance, and genuineness, it's something else. It's so simple that you know what it is. Could you write down what you think it is? You don't have to be right, it's a test. And Sophie, read out what they've written.
Yeah, I'm back again. Talk about a personal experience, myself. Sometimes I feel asking how students are listening, empathy, a smile, asking how they are, sharing, smile, smiling, listening, ask how students are, a joke, how are you today,
Cool.
smiling,
Cool.
personal contact.
I like all that. That's all, thank you. That's all, there's much more to come. Thank you, sorry to interrupt. That's really nice. And that's, so this is what I have in mind, which is kind of what all of you have said, and even some of you said the particular word. It's this. And here's, I just want to, for this final slide on facilitation, just give you again something that you already know and that you can, I found this so useful. It's a portable toolkit, 5 aspects of listening that you can have with you, right inside your ears and inside your heart in every class, or indeed in the kitchen table. And here we are, here are the 5. You'll recognize them all. Well, that's not one of them, that's before. So good listening can help the speaker to feel themselves, to have a voice. Here's number 1. Now, open questions. This does not mean the grammar kind of open question that we talk about when we're teaching languages. An open question is a question which leaves the field open for the other person to answer as they wish, to start where they like. The field is open. It invites them to find what's meaningful and to tell their story, so to speak. Could you say more? What are you thinking? Can you say that a different way? An open question gives a wider range of opportunity for the speaker to begin speaking in, and they can find for themselves where they wish to start, contrasted with closed questions, which again is not the grammatical form of closed questions, it's more to do with the semantic closed question. Like, what happened then, what you do, is that correct, and so on. Now, a closed question kind of ticks a box but it also closes the field, because a closed question is a product of the person asking it. It conveys the agenda of the teacher or the parent or the person asking it. I ask you to talk about this. The open question kind of goes quite a way to avoiding that by leaving the field open. Okay, third one. I'm not going to say any more about that because I'm sure you already know. Third one is so neat, and I love this. It's just clarification. I've listened for a moment or two, and then I say, could you say that again? I'm not sure if I got it. Let me see if I understood you. Are you saying this? In other words, I'm just checking understanding. It's such a neat, simple thing to do. It's good for the speaker because it helps them, if they have been unclear, to become clear, and they hear themselves being perhaps a bit clearer. It's good for the other students in the class because they pick up this habit of actually paying attention to someone and find that it actually is quite interesting to find out what someone means. And this is a way of showing value for the speaker. Again, good for the self-esteem. Number 4, summary. This is moving on a bit. What I like about this is that you feed back to the speaker after a moment. So this is what you're saying. What I think you're saying is this. Here's a summary. So, you know, and what you do is you help the speaker to move on, and they see that they've been heard. It could be very brief, but they see they've been heard. And again, it's good for the rest of the class to see that. Finally, this may not have any words to it at all, but this is, I call it free attention. In other words, your attention is not sort of locked up inside because you're worrying, or you're thinking about your shopping list, or you're thinking about what you're going to do next. Your attention is actually free. It's available for the person in front of you. And this enables you to listen appreciatively and attentively, perhaps with eye contact, undistracted by inner judgments. Because these inner judgments and the inner conversation, the inner chat that's going on when we're listening, it's visible. You can't pretend that you're listening if you're not. It's visible. Humans pick that up. And if I know that you're not really listening to me, it's hard to talk. If a student knows that you're only listening for correctness and not to the person, it makes it harder. So free attention says, I'm with you. There you are. There's a little toolkit. It's, like I say, it's all stuff that you know, but something so portable to have just in front of mind in the classroom, and to make active use of those. I find 1, 3, 4, and 5 like really, really, really super helpful. And by the way, I also noticed that when I am a bit stressed and in the class and kind of a little bit lost, anxious, my questions tend to close down. They go towards number 2. And the worst thing you can do when you're struggling is to ask closed questions, because your closed questions miss, they don't interest, they don't leave any space. Your closed questions simply reflect your own state rather than, so when you're struggling, try to ask open questions, because they will land and something will happen. That's my my advice, what to do in SOS times. Okay, let's move on. We've got 3 slides now of, these are in fact the last 3 slides, and these have to do with kitchen table teaching. So we're now returning to kitchen table teaching. So at a kitchen table, we share someone's home space. So this is like physically, if you actually go there, never mind online or not, the flowers, the soup pots, the clutter, the kettle, you're in a place that's us, that's you, that's local, that's real. It's where we live our lives. And that's where we chat and talk and laugh and so on. That's a kitchen table. Now, when we go online and we're at our kitchen table, we are sharing these spaces. So now we've lost a classroom, but we've gained, if we've got 20 students or 15 students, we've gained 15 or 20 kitchen tables. Yes, it's less professional, and that's something that at first may be a challenge, and it's more personal. But that feeds direct into the sense of genuineness, the sense of being who we are, the sense of person and affect. Talking to a teacher in Italy last week, and she said this: when I'm teaching at home, I have my home head on rather than my super professional teaching head. And she said that at first this was kind of a bit unnerving, but she says, I started to like this. And I no longer mind. They can see my kitchen and my fridge magnets and my daughter's drawings and so on. So table teaching kind of invites us to be ourselves. And it sort of makes a space for a kind of genuineness and appreciation of differences. And that's something that I think could come into, directly or indirectly, inform the classes that we're teaching online, if we care to pick up and elaborate and use this notion of kitchen table teaching. And if we just sort of, just using technical language for a moment, language of our profession, kitchen table teaching is kind of high on personal meaning, high on co-constructing conversation, and that's that we all participate in making the conversation, high on speaking in a personal space and speaking from the heart. So, my question is this a game changer? Is going online a game changer? Is going online, which is kind of apparently destroying some of our previous habits of face-to-face classroom, physical class teaching in this box, which is called a schoolroom. Is that actually an opportunity to merge what we do well, which is teach, with an affective space? Is this a kind of surprising benefit because we already don't think that school is a very affective space, and we perhaps even less think that online is an affective space? Perhaps it's actually got a lot of opportunity. And here's a little clue, and I find this really helpful. I don't know if this will touch anything in you. At a kitchen table, we host people. People and friends come round, the family's there. Maybe I'm just a colleague, or maybe I'm kind of hosting. Now, I find it helpful to think of hosting a lesson rather than teaching a lesson. And suddenly, when I just say that, hosting a lesson, already I feel liberated from old concepts of teaching a lesson. Doesn't mean to say I can't do the teaching stuff as well. But something opens up, and something opens up inside me. So anyway, I share that with you, hosting a lesson. Maybe that's part of the kitchen table teaching experience. Now, here are some tips. This is the last section, a couple of slides of these. The tips that I give myself as regards kitchen table teaching. This is a flower in my aunt's garden. In fact, all these are shots in my aunt's garden the other day. Here we go. This is not one of the tips. It's just a background. A teacher, Kerry Jones, she said in a talk, teaching online helps us to think about our presence. And that's, to think again about our presence. We perhaps took presence for granted in the physical classroom. Well, now we're in an online classroom, we can think again. So, number one, lower the affective barrier. Let people be themselves. And the kind of qualities that the Rogerian qualities help there: empathy, acceptance, genuineness. Number two, teacher listening. We just spoke about that, the 5 core aspects of listening. This is kind of the ground out of which facilitation grows, and it changes everything. Listen to the person behind the words. In language teaching, we tend to listen to the words, the correctness, but what happens if I listen to the person behind the words as well? Use the 5 interventions that I mentioned. And when you listen well, you'll be able to stop the anxious smiling like the Cheshire cat. And then you'll find that you can finish the day without a face that's aching, because the smile is an external smile, but there's also an internal smile, which comes through and shines and does not actually need the lip and cheek muscles to be twitching all the time. Teacher questions, number 3. As I already hinted, use more open questions, inviting the person behind to speak. Although it is language we are there for, it's also people we are there for. People have stuff to say. If people are saying stuff that is worthwhile for them, the language is going to count for more. Ask simple questions about what matters. Ask about, it's a useful sort of litmus test. Does this matter? Let me find out what matters and ask about that. Number 3, a variety of the same thing. Do the comprehension questions. Do the questions that are in the book and with the text, because that's part of the language learning design. But then, as soon as you finish that, ask questions where the answer is not in the text. So you go off text, and then something starts to happen. You know this, but make it a routine and get the students to make up questions where the answers are not in the text. It's about the text, it's located in the text, but the answers aren't there. Interesting stuff happens. Number 4, teachers speaking. One of the interesting things is that right now I'm speaking no louder than I do at my kitchen table. But if we were in a classroom, I would be talking not only a lot louder, but not with the intonation values that I use in conversation. I would be talking with a sort of reduced kind of teacherly intonation. But around the kitchen table, I can speak conversationally and online too. So although we're spread all over the place, some of you in Brazil and elsewhere, Bristol, here I am speaking conversationally. Number 2, slow down. I haven't been exemplifying that myself because I've been speaking rather quickly. But slow down, don't prattle, pause and enjoy the words, because that also helps to manage the time lag, which is sometimes evident in your video connection. And 4thly, very vitally, and not what I'm doing now, is keep inputs short. It just doesn't work if you go on too long. And maybe I'm not working already, but keep inputs short. So, get other stuff going than inputs. Number 5, student speaking. This is an obvious one, and probably you do this, but let me just remind you. Teachers often say, yes, good, that's correct, when the correct words are in the correct order. But actually, what needs to be done then is to connect them up into a nice, fluent gesture where the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 words are kind of connected. It doesn't have to be fast, it has to be connected. And that requires a certain stress. That's the way English works. So that means that even with the student who's always got the correct words, there's always somewhere to go. You can upgrade everyone. You can't correct everyone because some people are already correct, but you can upgrade everyone. I think that's useful. And it helps a person to be more self-expressive. And the second thing is help students to speak to each other, not just via you or me, the teacher. So make sure they're connecting up. Did you hear what she said? Oh, she didn't hear you. Can you do that again? And just pay relaxed, enjoyable attention to hooking them up. Did you hear? No, she didn't hear. Okay. Can you turn around so she can hear you? Because they all tend to speak to us, don't they? And I think that's the end of good communication, is when they're all speaking to me. Now, final slide.
Adrian, we've got 10 minutes towards the end. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Use names, because in a face-to-face class, it's obvious who you're addressing. Online, it isn't. So a good opportunity to use names. And the chat box is a great back channel, and people that may not want to speak can write. And so you've got speaking and writing going on together. That's beautiful. And on a, we can all chat box at the same time. We can't all talk at the same time, but we can all chat box at the same time. Gaze. This is an interesting thing. Look, right now I can look at all of you, all 500 of you, because I'm looking at the camera. In the class, I can't do that. I can only look at one at a time. So that's something interesting. Learn to look into the camera. Yeah, I've got to look down at these notes and all that stuff. But learn, once you've kind of got in mind what to say, to go back to the camera It's not difficult to do, although it's easy to forget. The kitchen theatre stage. Look, here's the stage, and my hands feel very close together, but that's the edge of the stage, as you can see. And the height of the stage is only that. It's not much more than the size of my head. As I go back, of course, it gets a bit wider. So get used to this stage. All your gestures have got to be up there, not down here. This is where I usually gesture and make my gestures. You Italian people, you like to gesture. Well, get your gestures up here, because they count for a lot. So you're going to have to learn the gesture sort of around your face somehow. Give up trying to control. Yeah, I think this is quite a strong thing, you know. Instead of controlling, reach out and connect. When people are connected, the whole issue of controlling changes. Teachers, you feel you ought to be interesting. Rubbish. Connect, connect, connect. When you connect, it's a lot more interesting even than being interesting. There's no pressure to be interested. The thing is to connect. And these affective skills, these very simple ones that I've been talking about, that helps you to connect. You know that, but I'm reminding you. And finally, last but not least, make plans, but use whatever happens. Whatever happens is the lesson. You know, be yourself, and let all the problems be part of the lesson. Whatever happens is the lesson. And that's really all I wanted to say. There's more to be said, but I'm not going to say any more now. And I hope that we'll have 1 or 2 questions. And just remember that you are very important people. Not everyone agrees, but we know that, and we should always remember that. Yeah, so I'm going to turn off my screen now. Actually, those are the people that I've listened to online. And this will be available, so you can look at it later, and you can go and find these organizations and these people. And they've all been doing very nice talks about teachers suddenly teaching online, and lots of technical and other kinds of help. I'm going to stop sharing now, and if there are any questions, I'll try to respond.
Okay, yeah, there was one question, Adrian. Thank you very much. That was great, as usual. There was one question that came through. Is the affective sphere more important than other spheres in education and the teaching learning process?
Okay, so I'm going to say a few words about that. Meanwhile, if there are any other questions, stick them in, I think, on Sophie's Q&A box. Of course, it depends. People differ on this, and if you're asking me, I will say that the affect is the ground out of which everything else grows. Everything will only happen as well as we treat the affect. The affect is the ground things grow from, and therefore, for me, it's the one thing that must be there all the time. Yes, of course, we need the cognitive. That's hugely important. But the cognitive does not function well without the affect being in good shape.
Okay, another question is, what are some of your favorite online activities for class time, Adrian?
Oh, well, I like sharing poems. I like to read poems, and I like to get students to read poems, and this can even be from really very early levels. Poems of a handful of words, poems that they have written, and kind of to rehearse them a little bit, so that the words are kind of connected up and speak from the heart. My favorite activities are activities where people kind of speak from the heart, and therefore I like things like poems, or little games where sort of like improv games. I like short improvisation games, which are usually very funny, and you know, one-word stories, or a story where the next word has to begin with a letter of the last word, how it ended, or everyone has to add 3 words, or you give a problem, a human problem, and one item from the kitchen, and 3 people have to solve that human problem using the item from the kitchen and to tell it in a sentence. Little improv games. I like, because they're spontaneous, they use language, they require ingenuity, and they're fun, and there's no right answer.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Adrian. Another question, actually, this is a similar theme that was coming up this morning about assessment. How can you manage the affective side with the assessment requirements?
This is tricky and requires all the ingenuity and all the patience that we have got, because for the most part, assessment does not assess the affect, it's cognitive stuff. And this is one of the reasons why affect gets left out. It's harder to assess, it's harder to arrange a classroom for it. The cognitive is kind of easy stuff. It ticks boxes. I'm exaggerating just to make the point. Sorry, what's the question again, Sophie?
It was, how can you manage the affective side with the assessment requirements? So the balancing the two. So on the one hand, having to test, and on the other hand, wanting to maintain its effectiveness.
Here's just one thing, which for me is important. I don't know if this will make any sense to you. I want to say to the student, the whole class, look, the game is to pass this exam and to pass it very well. So we are going to learn to play this game, and these are the rules, and the rules of the exam are, and so on. We are not the exam. There is more to you than passing this exam. We're going to have fun. We're going to have a lot of fun playing this game. So I kind of get hold of what has to be done. And instead of it being everything that has to be done, it's one of the things that has to be done. The other thing that has to be done is to have a good time doing it. So we have our fun and our affect around the edge of the playing of this game. Sounds simple, and it probably is quite simple.
I guess you take the fear factor out of it then, don't you?
Yeah. You know, we're playing a bigger game in the end. We're playing the game of life. And at the moment in the game of life, we are playing passing this exam.
Yeah, it's like an adventure.
Yeah.
Okay, another question from Philomena. How can we deal with colleagues who give so little importance to effectiveness and drone on, I quote Philomena, drone on about getting their interrogazione done, the interrogation, which sounds, in English, it sounds very, quite scary, but interrogation would be oral testing, basically. Shall I repeat the question?
Yes, I'm assuming, is it just the colleagues go on about it, or you've got to cooperate with those colleagues?
I think it's an element of a combination of the two.
It is difficult, I know, and to reduce our own anxiety as much as possible, because that actually is an important thing for our students. I think we have to work with the world as we find it, and at the same time try to change it, so to speak, from the inside. You know, that means we have to work with people as they come to us, with these teachers that you describe, and yet always bring our sense of connection, relationship, fun to it, so that people can feel this is not what the whole thing that it's all about. This is just something that we're doing right now, and it's a game, and we can actually do it quite well. But actually there's something more fun and bigger going on all around us. Yeah, you've got to manage those colleagues. It doesn't mean you're agreeing with them. It just means that you are acknowledging that they do it their way, and you are bringing what you can while cooperating with them, but you're bringing fun to it.
Okay, great, thank you. And we've still got time for another question. I teach, Lucia, I teach in a challenging school where we cannot use video nor audio teaching. However, we chat via texts, emails, and written discussions. My year 10 class is reluctant and their participation has been rare. What can you advise me to involve them and actually make them log in? Thank you.
I see. So you've got a class, a year 10, if I remember, and you can't see them. So you're not online like we are now. You're not using Zoom. You're using text and bits and pieces, which means that you may be synchronously online, perhaps, but you're not seeing each other. Text is as good as it gets. Is that right? Yes,
basically. It's text, emails, and written discussions.
Yeah. Well, people, humans, have survived under extraordinary conditions. You know, people are going along and doing something well, then you take away part of what they need and they find a way around it. And you take away part again and they find a way around that. And you take away part again and they find a way around that. It doesn't get easier, but it still remains possible. How to come across with those qualities of facilitation through text, how to convey acceptance and enjoyment of the other person through text and email, how to keep it brief so that you're not spending loads of time on it, how to feel in your heart when you write the email or write the text that you wish the best for that student, that you accept them, that you understand life and learning is not so easy for them, but you are behind them and you are, so to speak, at their service in the way that you can. I think for me, you know, it may sound obvious and it may sound mysterious, but have the wish in your heart, because the rest flows from that. It can be done. It can be done even in text.
That's great, Adrian. And maybe connecting to what you said before about you like using poetry, then the power of the written word could be exploited for that.
That's good, yes. I mean, just think of text-length poems or short little poems or sort of dramatic monologues of 10 words or something. Yeah, bring text to life. What a wonderful thing to be doing. That's what actors around the world are doing. That's what we go to the movies for, why we go to the theatre, where people bring text alive.
That's creative writing. So you could have dialogue, you can do dramatic monologues, dramatic dialogues, collaborative writing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, suss out the medium and bring your heart to the medium, and then those two things together will show you what to do.
Okay, great, thank you. It's 5:05, Adrian. Would you like another question, or should we just tie in now, or should we keep to the time?
Let's have one more question.
One more question. This is the last question then. From Mike Ray, it's tempting to rely on imported materials or texts, showing text online, etc. How can we keep a more sustained output from exploiting our own real context with our students when we are in the same desk space each lesson? Shall I repeat that question?
So how can you sustain interest when you mean the same kitchen table?
Yes.
Oh, well, perhaps maybe this is trite, but I mean, bring something different to the kitchen table, or point the camera in a different direction and get the students all to turn the camera around through 40 degrees every lesson, or get them to, you know, how long would the lessons be, Sophie? 40 minutes, an hour?
I think they have been an hour. Yeah, I think they're going to an hour, even longer sometimes, but generally I think an hour, 40 minutes can be.
Sitting in front of a computer is perhaps even tougher than sitting in a class, perhaps. So we do need to get back, and we do need to sort of all have a little repertoire of exercises. And perhaps one can be, take 10 seconds and go and find something in your room that you've never brought to school before. There's some stuff over there I'll go and get, actually. I could bring it here and show it to us. Let's have a 2-minute show and tell, and make sure you bring something that you didn't bring before. And we won't get through everybody each lesson. But what's the story attached to that? You know, if I just pick this up, do you know where that came from? I'll tell you. That came from Hebron, which is in Palestine, in 1963. And it's made from molten down Coca-Cola bottles. And I was there, and I was 10 at that time. I got a whole collection of stuff. You can see it's cracked at the top. That's 50 years old, and it's from Palestine. They're amazing, Coca-Cola bottles. And here's its sister. And they're all wobbly, and they've all lasted all that time. And they've been in different countries in the world. So there's one thing you can do anyway.
Yeah, and theoretically you can do even more, can't you? Because you've got access to all those things in your house.
Yeah, I've got a whole lot of stuff. I've got 50 years of teaching in this house.
It's interesting as well how we've kind of confined ourselves to this box as well. We're thinking with it inside the box, because if you think, people are doing yoga lessons online too, yeah, and gym lessons. So I guess there's no reason why we have to be in the box. We could actually sort of step back and use all the space in our kitchen.
This is it, and that's why I think it's useful to see this as a stage, and we bring stuff on stage, and there's stuff in the wings which isn't here at the moment, and we've got to be performers in this weird little rectangular stage.
Yeah, max headroom, remember. Okay, all right, so our time has run out now. We've gone a little bit over time, so thank you very much, Adrian. It's a real shame that you can't read the, can you see the chat box now?
I'm seeing the chat box, yes, which is very nice. Thank you,
Okay.
Pete.
So yeah, lots of really positive comments. So it seems like sort of a life-changing session here. Very refreshing, as usual. Thank you very much. I had no doubts whatsoever that you were going to give us lots of food for thought for our kitchen table, so we know what's for dinner tonight.
Okay, long live kitchen tables. So
okay, just before we go, just some information. If you could fill in the survey when you log out, if you could fill in the survey that we've given you and leave your email, and we will send you through your certificate of attendance, which is accredited by the MURE. And we will also send you through the access for the recording and for Adrian's slides for the presentation. If you would like any more information about AISLi and AISLi schools, as I said, we are all over Italy. There are 50 schools all over Italy. Please do go to our website or our Facebook page. We will be organising some more webinars in the future, so we'll keep in touch and we'll let you know what's on the horizon. Okay, so yeah, that's everything. Thank you again, Adrian. That's wonderful.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Sophie, and thanks everyone for coming. And I've just seen someone called Amanda Underhill come up on the chat list, whoever you are.
I thought maybe she was related to you, actually. Distant relative. No. Okay, all right. Thank you, Adrian. And thank you, everybody.